Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to create this super easy botanical handmade watercolour card. I used very standard watercolours for this piece. I didn't use my Winsor & Newton palette as I think that can be out of people's price range and I wanted it to be accessible to everybody. I also decided to release this video in real time for free over on my channel, so if you enjoy this video make sure to check that out as I go over all of my tips and tricks and really get in depth on how to create this painting.
Hi everyone, my name's Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting the 5th card as part of my watercolour card painting series. You can use this watercolour card for absolutely any occasion. You can mix up the calligraphy and use it for a birthday, anniversary, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever you decide. So get them watercolour paints ready and let's get started.
So for this particular painting I am using watercolour paper, as you don't want to paint straight onto card. You can always use watercolour paper and stick this onto cards after, or get actual watercolour cards if you can find any. But you don't want to paint straight onto card as this is going to ruin the paper. You do need specifically watercolour paper. For the colours I wanted to use the same colour as always for each flower. I've done this across the whole painting series and I'm using a slightly bigger brush than usual to paint this rose. I'm using a size 7 brush instead of the size 2 that I would usually use. I wanted it to look a little bit messier and more natural, so by using this brush that meant that you couldn't really perfect the edges because it was bigger, so having this was really useful to create more of that natural rose. It meant that I didn't want to perfect it as much and I was happy with how they turned out. To create the roses I used bright pink watercolour. I started off really small within the centre and then as I got wider out away from the petals I used a lot more pressure with this paintbrush. And I also didn't mind that things were overlapping. That was something I wasn't too worried about. I really do believe that having that overlap created that more natural effect, so I was really happy with how this turned out. As long as there is a little bit of separation, this is perfect for this particular painting because you can see the individual petals and therefore tell it's a rose without them all merging together and creating a messy circle. So once I was happy with the roses, I mixed red and yellow to create a really nice deep powerful orange and a bright yellow with a hint of that orange in there, so it created almost like a gold colour. Then I used the size 2 brush to create a really easy flower shape. I initially started out with 4 petals. I find it easier the less petals you have, as you don't want these to be touching. When you've got too many of the same petals or going into that one centre, it is more likely for them to overlap, so just be careful of that. Once I was happy with that general shape, getting wider as I came out, that general curve, I added just a drop of that orange within the centre. You don't need too much of this. I let that bleed out into the rest of the flowers, and combined with these colours it was a beautiful effect. I love the way the orange and yellow blended together. I then created a really light purple, so I added a lot of water to it, and the exact same colour but with less water, so a really dark version of the same colour. And I used this to paint opposite petals, and by this I mean wherever the centre is, opposite that I'd go in and paint a petal. Made these petals really wide, big, curved, and none of them overlapped. This was really important as we're using that really light purple to begin with. If you do overlap it, it's all going to merge as the paper's still wet. With the drying time that you're going to allow for these petals, when you go in later and paint the rest of the petals, it will mean that the overlap is really clear because watercolour is translucent. Because we have that really light colour, the overlap is going to be really extreme and really prominent within this painting. While this is drying, you can go in and add more flowers, more of the same flowers we've already painted, as we have some space to fill now, as these are all of the flowers we are going to be painting today. By leaving that room, we know that we can add more or less of certain flowers if we want to at this stage, so it's nice that we have that balance between all of the different colours. So now that we have all of the flowers down that we're going to be painting today, it is the perfect time to start filling the rest of the space with these flowers. A lot of this will be repetition of what we've done already, but I also went in, for example, with the orange, painted a few circles, and then later on I'm going to connect all of this together with some lines going into / behind some of the flowers that you can see. And I did the exact same thing with a really light earth green. The only difference this time is I had a darker version of this earth green and dotted a little bit of that into the sides of the circles to let this bleed out so you have a variation of the shadows. And I also used this earth green to paint some basic leaf shapes. To do this, you want to create the outline, pointed edge and getting wider at the centre, and then you can fill the rest of this in with that light earth green. When this is dry, I went in with the dark earth green. You'll see me do so later on. I use this to add the very generic leaf line shapes that you would see, so the bold line down the middle and then little lines coming out from that. And I wanted all of the leaves to come out of the flowers. I think this tied everything together really nicely, filled a lot of the space and created a really beautiful part to the whole painting. Once I'd got all the petals down as well for the light purple flowers, I used the darker purple, went in and added some lines to the centre of that. I followed the structure of each of the leaf shapes, so all of the lines I put in between each petal, all the lines came out from that and followed that really curved edge, so you could very distinctly see where the petal started and finished with this dark element added to it. You want to be really careful as well that you don't overlap a lot of the paint. This is something that can really ruin the piece if the colours merge together, if you've not allowed the right amount of drying time and attempt to overlap. For example, you'd have that really dark green merging into the bright pink roses, which you really don't want. You want that separation between all of these colours. So at this stage of the painting, we have all the elements intended. So we've learned how to do the roses and the rest of the flowers. Now it is just getting things down and filling the rest of the space. If there's anywhere that is completely missing any flowers, any really big areas of negative space, you want to go in at this stage and start filling that in. Be conscious that, again, as I've mentioned before, if the paper isn't dry, the colours will merge together. But this is the opportunity to go in and add more of whatever you prefer. So I personally really loved the yellow flowers. Yellow is my favourite colour, so I really wanted to go in and make sure there was more yellow going on within the rest of the painting. So I'd put a few petals creeping out from behind, for example some of the roses and purple flowers, but I was really happy with how everything turned out and really merged together. And then you can go in with your calligraphy pen once you're really happy with all of the paint that you've added down. I wrote I love you, but feel free to add whatever you want to this particular painting. It's your work. You want to write happy birthday, happy Easter, Valentine's Day, completely your choice. Make sure to let me know down below in the comments how you found this tutorial and how your watercolour painting turned out.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really hope you've enjoyed this watercolour card painting tutorial. I hope to see you for the next tutorial, where again we'll be creating more watercolour cards. And if you've really enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my Patreon down below, where you can find the real-time tutorial for you to watch whenever you please. And it's also available over on my website, which again is down below. Make sure you take a look, and you can purchase it completely separately without having to become a Patreon member. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye guys!